time for this
Let's
one.
go
So
ahead.
go
We're
ahead.
gonna open I guess we have to open the workshop. And I'm going to just kind of get started with what my thoughts are about this and some of the questions that I want to get answered. And the last we made two pretty big decisions in the last few meetings, and the city council's overturned both of them. And I don't have any problem with them overturning them, but I want to get some clarification on, what our I guess what our parameters are, what our leeway is, in looking at these things and having the ability to turn it down, because I don't think it's good for the city, as opposed to, it's a request. And then the other thing I want to talk about a little bit in this workshop is we get a lot of these things that come before us, and they're prefaced or they're finished with the fact that this falls in line with the 2050 plan. And we're getting, I think we're getting into the weeds a little bit, because the 2050 plan is a living document, and we've had a couple of cases where someone has come in here, spoke and read the 2050 plan to us, and it didn't agree with what we have on our agenda. And I've talked to the city manager about this in the past. My opinion is that we shouldn't be using the 2050 plan as a parameter to recommend something, in my opinion. It's just an opinion.
Gotcha.
That we should be more in line with, does this fit the bill or does it not fit the bill? Because the 2050 plan is a great plan, but it's a living document that is somewhat conflicting. So that's the reason why I asked to have a workshop.
I'll go through some slides and introduction. We'll have
Okay.
some open dialogue in between.
Okay.
I think it's great to have a workshop and kind of come back and remind everybody and ourselves why we're here, what we're doing. I think first and foremost, our process, I believe, is working. I think you guys continue to do a great job looking at cases, weighing the best option for the city, based on, one, the comprehensive plan, two, kind of our zoning policies and the requests that are brought before you. So just because we've had a couple big cases overturned, I wouldn't say anything's broken, but it is a good time to sit back and look at it and go through that again. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the legal side, maybe not. There we go. Oh, Martin's going to fix it for me. There we go. So the Planning and Zoning Commission is two separate functions. The planning portion really refers to plat approval and that master planning process of the city. Plats being the majority of what you guys see. We'll go through a little bit of that as well. And then zoning, you're a recommending body to city council to make recommendations for or against a zone change. I know we've talked about it a few times. If y'all deny something, the applicant actually has to appeal to council rather than automatically going to council. That's not uncommon in cities across the state. Some cities do have plats go to city council. In those cases, they only have a zoning commission, but obviously we do have a planning and zoning commission, so you serve both roles. The platting and subdivision is an administrative act with very little discretion. If the plat meets all the city requirements, then you must approve it. That's why you guys rely on staff of Steve and I, engineering department, public works, to go through each plat, review it against the subdivision code, and make sure it meets all of those criteria. We have seen a couple that had waivers from city council. We've had some that had minor waivers that you guys can approve, and we try to note those, make sure you're aware of it. And then those conditions of approval, you can either relay back to staff, so staff has the authority to check those conditions on the next draft, basically. In some cities, conditional approval has to come back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a second look at it. With us meeting once a month and the state law restrictions on plat approval, it makes it very difficult for revisions to come back to you guys, because we only have 14 days to review a revision, which means you guys would have to actually meet twice a month. And that would basically be strictly just for plats, but we don't have the volume that a lot of cities have, both cases or plats. So whenever we say we're recommending a plat approval with conditions, those conditions are deferred to staff to review, because by and large, it meets the code except these 2 or 3 little things. From a zoning, it is an exercise of legislative power, and there is discretionary actions based on the governing body. For the Planning and Zoning Commission, quasi-legislative body, similar to a congressional subcommittee, duty to implement plans adopted by city council, so that includes the comprehensive plan, among other things. And then again, you give recommendations to council to their full discretion. I'm going to get a little deeper into state law. The purpose of the Planning and Zoning Commission: promote public health, safety, morals, and general welfare in protecting and preserving places and areas of historical, cultural, or architectural importance. We are required to be in compliance with the comprehensive plan, and I'll come back to your comments, Mike, on that in a moment. The zoning regulations must be adopted in accordance with the comp plan and designed to lessen congestion, secure safety from fire, panic, and other dangers, promote health and general welfare, and prevent overcrowding. You mentioned that we have had citizens come in, read things out of the comp plan that contradict what we're recommending on one hand, and there is some conflict within the comp plan. Of those 9 or 10 chapters, what we're really focusing on, when we say this is consistent with the comprehensive plan, we're looking at the land use chapter only. There are certainly economic development pieces or housing are the two that come up the most frequent. Some of those housing comments in the housing chapter don't always align with the land use plan. Same with the economic development, parks and open space, water and wastewater. But for the compliance with the comp plan as it relates to zoning, it's just that land use chapter. So we could certainly do y'all a favor and be more clear that this is consistent with the comp plan in that it is consistent with the future land use
I
plan.
think that would be very well.
Okay, we
Because
can work on that.
That takes out
Right.
just saying that this falls in line with the 2050 comprehensive plan. I think if you get into more detail, that probably solves almost all of those issues.
Okay. And not that the other chapters and the input there aren't important. They're not necessarily strict compliance with the zoning. So we've had those discussions here with the public and commission as well on what the citizen may be reading from as a different chapter.
Yes.
And we are specifically looking at land use. And while those are important aspects of the city's comprehensive plan, may not exactly align. And then again, you guys define the districts of the zoning map, and that's what comes before you, are those changes to those districts.
It's .004, is this state law you're reading?
Yes, sorry, this is chapter 211 of the Texas Local Government Code.
Because that's impossible.
It's lofty at best.
Well, must be adopted in accordance with the comprehensive plan, okay. And must be designed to lessen congestion, yada, yada, yada.
Right. So you'll see in our standard report, we do talk about traffic impact or impact on the thoroughfare plan system. Now, to the user driving down the street, they'll see more cars on the street with any development. When we say there's no impact on the thoroughfare system, those roads are built to handle that kind of traffic. So getting kind of into the weeds, but for an example, multifamily zoning in our zoning code requires access to a collector or an arterial street. Otherwise, it doesn't comply with the zoning code. The intention behind that is the collector street is a larger street designed to withstand that extra traffic from a multifamily development. Same thing for the arterials or the thoroughfares. They're They are designed to handle that level of traffic. But the complaints that we get from citizens are driving down the road, there will be more cars coming out of this subdivision or this development. But again, that road was designed for it. Some cases, not so much on Sidney Baker at 5 o'clock, but most cases around town, you'll see that there's plenty of cars going by, and there's not really ever a backup of traffic. It's just right here at the intersection of two major highways that are regional corridors for everything around us. It does back up at times. Does that answer that question a little bit?
Now, that's actually a really important note, when we do have times where we've got a room full of people complaining about the traffic, not that it's not a valid concern, but the road has already been designed to handle that traffic, so, okay.
And again, just in comparison, you drive down Holdsworth Drive today, there's 2 or 3 developments that actually touch Holdsworth Drive. As it's built out, it's gonna be busy like Junction Highway or Sidney Baker. But that's why it's a 4-lane road,
Right.
divided for extra safety. Eventually, it's gonna be a busy road, and it's gonna have a high traffic count.
Is that a city street or is that a,
Holdsworth is a city street.
yeah, see, that would be one of the things, not to get off into the weeds, but when Highway 173 was built a long, long time ago, I'm sure there weren't as much residential development there is now.
Mhm.
It's a 2-lane road.
Correct.
It may be a main road, it may be a whatever thoroughfare, whatever you call it, but it's still a 2-lane. It may be built structurally or whatever to handle increased traffic, but reality,
Yeah,
you put 1,200 homes out there on it, it's not built for that.
correct. I always say that Kerrville's in an interesting spot. We have the benefit that most of our thoroughfares are TxDOT right-of-way,
Right.
in that we and the taxpayers don't have to maintain it directly. It's also a burden that all of our thoroughfares are, or most of our thoroughfares are TxDOT, and we have no control over it.
Right.
So TxDOT is, unfortunately by nature, reactive. When traffic counts hit a certain peak, then they start looking at designing, funding, coordinating a new develop, or a new roadway expansion. And sometimes that takes 3 or 4 or 5 years.
So,
To your point, Mike, the road, I mean, developments that are tangential to state highway, that's a big word, I know. TxDOT has they're required to do the study, and if they need decels and acceleration lanes and left turns, all that stuff, that alter that road, which is not, may be heavy enough, like you say, but doesn't have enough stop and goes on it.
so, under this guideline right here, when we're talking about traffic and congestion, and I'm just gonna use the example of what was just turned down for D.R. Horton.
Right.
So, that highway was built for the heavy traffic that 1,200 homes would create. Is that what we're saying?
Not today, but they have the right-of-way. I think they have the right-of-way there. Again, it's difficult with TxDOT because we don't have that control, but,
160-foot right of way, plenty of right of way.
yeah, so they've,
Every project has to have a traffic study, right?
Yeah.
TxDOT requires it. The city does not require a traffic impact analysis on every project, just
if
at
it's
certain
potential problem,
thresholds.
they
Answer your
do.
question is no, it's not.
So it is a difficult question. It's a difficult answer as well. For D.R. Horton, the road built today can't handle that kind of traffic, or it can handle it, but there will be congestion. At some point, TxDOT will hit a trigger and widen that road.
So Kevin, every project requires a traffic study
State highway.
on a state highway.
State highway. So like if it gets through us, I don't even know if that, and I might be wrong, but we shouldn't even be concerned about that. Because once we're approving a zoning, and then after that, it's going into development and everything else where y'all have to, or they have to provide a traffic study and all that. So when everybody's upset about that, and it's just like, that happens further down the road, not in this.
Correct. And I'll give another example. When D.R. Horton was looking at the property behind River Hill on Highway 16, they actually did do the traffic analysis before it went through, I think, council. No, it wasn't before P and Z, but I think they finished it before it went to council. And they did have requirements to added turn lanes in and out. Certain ones were restricted to right only. And they went through, and that was going to be the developer's expectation to make those improvements.
Yeah, and that was a substantially less dense development,
It was,
substantially.
but to the point.
I get your point.
Yeah, so when we're on a city street, say if we're looking at Holdsworth Drive, which is already built out as a 4-lane road, then we would say this road is designed and
Yeah,
built for this
agreed.
traffic. And it is difficult on TxDOT, especially on the outskirts where those improvements haven't been made. We've had similar cases come up on Loop 534. When the middle school went in, they had to put in a decel lane. They changed the middle turn lane so that the middle school and high school could both utilize that turn lane. Doesn't solve all the problem. There's still congestion. It's still 2 schools across the street from one another. But they did have to put in those additional decel lanes so that
Correct.
most of the traffic could get out of the main lane to enter into the middle school. I would imagine Lennar is going to have the same thing when they do their curb cut for their collector running through their development. They'll have to add a decel lane. And then again, at some point, TxDOT will look at widening Loop 534.
Is Cypress Creek Road, I mean, it's a TxDOT
It is.
road, so the deal that we approved and council denied,
Mhm.
With that, I mean, the traffic was, I mean, the people were worried about traffic in Cypress Creek Road, so the same thing, like, it's a state highway, had to do a
Correct.
traffic study, if it wouldn't handle it, they would have to improve it
That's
for it
correct.
to move forward.
That wasn't really why traffic wasn't the reason why they turned that down.
You know, I didn't know.
Well, the reason, my understanding of watching the meeting and listening to everyone speak is they were concerned about changing the character of the hillside and the area right there, as opposed to, you know, and that was brought up in the 2050 comprehensive plan. If you look at their sections in the plan that say that we're responsible, the 2050 plan is promoting, maintaining the hill country atmosphere, the hill country feel of where we live, and they were concerned about, and I'm not saying this is what they said, I'm saying I watched it, that cutting into the hill and putting things over there that were gonna interrupt the quality of, you know, that hill country area.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that traffic ever got, I don't think they ever got to the traffic part.
I don't
But
remember.
So the traffic study is done, and we've already gone through, let's say we approve it, the traffic study is done. And the traffic study, the traffic study is done before any development is done, correct?
Correct.
And the traffic study shows this road's not capable of handling all this traffic. What happens then when we've already approved this?
They either have the option of upgrading the road to meet that standard, and again, the traffic impact analysis will show what improvements are required. If they choose not to make those improvements, the development doesn't go forward.
Okay.
So the zoning is still in place, but the next project that comes in, whatever shape and form it is, they do a new traffic impact analysis. Whatever those results are, TxDOT says build it or nothing gets built. Because TxDOT actually has the authority to restrict that access at that point. So.
Okay.
Little more on the state law. Procedures governing adoption of zoning regulations and district boundaries. The governing body, through our zoning code, established the process by which cases are approved. And Mike, make sure I'm reading this right. If city council overturns a P and Z denial, it requires a 3/4 vote. Is that right?
No, they could do that per state law.
Oh, they can. Yeah, our code does not require that, but they can, sorry. As a home rule city, we do get to create our own zoning code, our own zoning districts, planning and zoning commission, all of those components that we have. Now moving to our zoning code. Again, state law gives council the authority to create the zoning code, create the planning commission, and then within the zoning code are your rules and regulations. So P&Z recommends to council the comprehensive plan, and then review is necessary. Again, kind of standard practice is every 5 to 10 years, we review it anyway. We're going through that right now, and you guys are more than well aware of that. The zoning ordinance, you also adopt or give a recommendation to city council to make changes to the code or adopt the code. And then subdivision plats, you have the approval or the authority to approve plats. We talked about our last meeting, an update to the subdivision code where staff will review replats, because those are things that are already platted, may or may not have been developed, and they're just adjusting lot lines on existing platted lots. So we're not talking about, typically not talking about new infrastructure, new roads, just adjusting lot lines. We see quite a bit of this in areas of Comanche Trace that are still developing. Someone will buy 1.5 lots because they want a larger lot. So they replat those 2 or 3 lots into 2. So instead of bringing those to you guys, we'll handle those at the staff level unless there's anything new or unusual, and then we can still bring it to you if need be.
Preliminary plats and replats, they don't go beyond planning and zoning, right?
That's correct. Yeah. Through the subdivision code, council gave the planning commission that authority. Zoning changes, you guys are familiar with that process. That's what we look at. City or the applicant may initiate a zoning change, changing the district boundaries. Any variances go to the zoning board of adjustment. And then any ordinance review, again, anything that we see we have an issue with, or if development community has issues with, we can bring those to you for consideration. You make a recommendation to council to amend the zoning code. So kind of a quick summary of all of that. Texas law and the zoning code delineate the distinct roles between planning commission and city council. Again, you guys are looking at the land use, future land use plan and land use chapter of the comprehensive plan, whereas city council is looking at all of the comprehensive plan. City staff, we provide a technical report based on those policies. If there's anything that you guys want to see different or added to that, for example, specifying consistent with the comprehensive plan is the land use chapter in the future land use plan. We can make those changes. Then you as a body look at the recommendation along with the public hearing input and make a recommendation to city council. City council then takes your recommendation, the broader policies that city council has, and makes their determination. So in the case of D.R. Horton, a lot of the discussion was really tied to water use. Do we have enough water for this development today or 5 or 10 years from now? What does that look like? It's not typically something the planning commission would be looking at, because we're just looking at the land use authority. Do they have that entitlement, or do we want to give them that entitlement to develop the way they've shown? Whereas council is looking at water, development character, and just, again, broader policies than is really under y'all's purview. So again, the structure is stepped in multiple parts on purpose to kind of build that criteria up for each case. A couple other things Mike and I talked about this morning. As you guys have seen, oftentimes we'll have a few people talk to you guys during the public hearing at the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then it goes to council and there's more people. Whether neighborhoods stir up more discussion or some people just want to make sure they go to the decision maker instead of the recommending body. Conversations we've had with the public, some people have said they're not coming to the planning commission, they're gonna wait and see if it passes first, and then they'll come talk to council. So that's why we often see very different discussions here than we do at council, because sometimes different or more people will show up, bringing up different things that they didn't talk about here. With that, I'll open it up to any questions, comments. Mike can throw things at me if I said it wrong.
Anybody have any comments or questions? Nothing? And I'm gonna specifically use the D.R. Horton request, and we've had these in the past. that I would have made, and I don't know, and this is my question, I would have recommended that that thing be denied, basically because there was no information provided to us. It was just, we want to annex it, we want it rezoned, and we got all these, this third grade drawing of where we want to do the lots. And I somehow in the back of my mind feel like that I don't have can't really do that because I have a very strict, narrow thing that I can say I'm not in favor of that. And that's a question that I would like to get clarified. If I look at something and I don't think it's presented properly, or I don't think it's right, I don't think it's a good thing because of what it's gonna create, do I have the authority to vote against it? Or do I need some specific legal reason?
On a zoning change, I'm gonna separate plats real quick. I know we're not talking about plats, but for plats, you do have
Plats,
to.
I don't have a problem
Right,
with it.
just to clarify.
Yeah.
Plats, you do have to have a specific reason.
And I understand that.
They do not meet X section of the code, so on and so forth.
Sure.
And I know you guys rely on us to provide that.
Yeah, I get that. I don't have any
And
issues.
if they do, then,
Right,
right.
yeah. For zoning, you do have a broader discretion. In the case of D.R. Horton, we say it is consistent with the future land use plan to have neighborhood development in that area. Where it gets complicated is Planning Commission wants to see more information, such as a better, more refined concept plan. We're not tying that development to the concept plan. So if you find yourself in a situation where you need more information, we've got to be real clear to the applicant on what are we asking for. Not that you guys have done this, but I've seen it in the past where commission says, we want more information, but didn't tell them what they wanted. So then they continue the case to the next month and come back with what the applicant thought the commission needed, and bring back some pretty renderings or traffic study or whatever, and you're actually asking about water. So if we are gonna postpone a case to ask for more information, we've gotta be clear about what we're asking for.
And I thoroughly understand that. I use that as an example in this particular case.
Right.
I mean, I think they did a poor job of presentation, but that wouldn't be a reason that I would turn it down. You know, I just think that my opinion would be that the impact on the area, people that live there in the city would be negative, and that would be a reason for me to turn down the zoning request. I mean, the annexation request.
Mhm.
And again, my question is, can I do that? Am I stepping out of what my little roadmap is? Because I've always heard in the past, especially from you guys, you can't consider that. Or you have to make it on this. You can't, just because you don't like it, just because you don't think it's a good fit, and that's my question.
So you said a lot, but your question is, based upon that specific case, could you have turned it down?
Yes.
Yes, you could have. Now, I get a little bit nervous when someone comes and like Drew alluded to, you don't give them direction, or you don't really say what it is that is the problem, right? And sometimes it's hard because you all are a 7-member body, and so what may be bothering one person may not bother another. So that's why you have motions and things of that nature. But yes, you certainly can. The better practice is so that if it goes into my world, I can point to something that you all have said that's, of course, legitimate, and I can say, well, this is the reason why. It was incompatible. That's what you're saying. In that situation, you thought that the proposed zoning was incompatible with surrounding uses, and that is absolutely a legal basis to deny it. What I'll say about that, in my opinion, I've never been on the development side. I thought at the end of that 2020 kind of a third-party review is they really dropped the ball, and you talked about that. And I say that because let me step back. I tell people that development is an inexact science. I mean, it's not apples to apples. What a Lennar might do is not something that a D.R. Horton does. And sometimes I get questions like, why didn't they do what Lennar did? Well, as I recall, Lennar came in a couple of times and they kind of went back and forth, and council or even maybe perhaps this body said, hey, you need to go back and do some homework, because those projects are so robust and so involved that it's not a 10-acre site. And so while the focus at that time was annexation and zoning and compatibility of land uses, if it were me, I would have touched on at least how we thought drainage was going to work, how access was going to work, what the build-out was going to be over a 10, 20-year period.
That was all of those
They'll
things.
tell you, I'll tell you this, they'll tell you, because they've told me, we don't want to do that because we don't want to spend the money. Well, okay, but now they're back to square one after coming to y'all and then council and getting denied. So it's inexact science. I would have done more homework if I were them, and maybe they'll do that and come back. But bottom line, in summary, if you've heard nothing else I said, it's better that you all, when you consider cases, that the motion is move for denial, and there's something in the record that you all thought was wrong with the compatibility of the use for zoning cases.
Oh, don't leave, Counselor. Let me get a clarification on
Okay.
something.
Yes.
In the case of a denial by P and Z, where the who's ever making the proposal goes, okay, and they go to council, what vote does council, what do they have to do in zoning, for instance, to overturn a recommendation? Is it no different, or?
I think right now it's a majority vote at council.
That's
Simple majority.
Simple majority.
Is it majority?
Yeah.
So we talked about that when we rewrote the zoning code, as I kind of fumbled through the state law. The state law gives council the authority to put it in the zoning code to require a 3/4 vote.
Okay,
We did not do that.
We
We
didn't
went
do
with a
that
simple
when we
majority.
redid
that's what I was
the charter.
confused about. Got it.
That's if we deny something, it can still go to council.
Right.
Okay.
So
They, I think according to what Drew said, they have to appeal it to council. It just doesn't automatically go.
Right.
But
Right.
if they want to appeal, they get on the docket.
Correct. So we basically put it back in the applicant's court.
Right.
They have to file an appeal with our office that says, yes, I want to go before council with a recommendation of denial. If they don't, then it's just dead. And then they,
The reason I asked the question is the last zoning commission I served on, if we denied something and they appealed it to council, council had to approve by 3/4. And that was a local option.
Correct.
That's, okay.
yeah, Lubbock was the same way. If it was denied by P and Z, it still went to council automatically, and it required a 3/4
Okay.
majority vote.
We haven't availed ourselves to that local option. And the other thing I'll say is, we did this last comprehensive review and adoption of a new zoning code. We did put the onus on the applicant, if they were denied here, to take affirmative action to get it moving up to council. Because I'll tell you this, sometimes they didn't care, they wouldn't do it. We just put it on council's agenda, they wouldn't show up, and it was kind of a waste of time. But I also think when they do appeal, I think council takes into consideration highly why was it denied? They'll presumably ask Drew, and he'll add something in his agenda bill as to what the concern was before you. And so they do. This is an advisory board, and many of y'all have been on this for years and years and have experience, and they do take into consideration your recommendation.
But if we do deny something, it's important to have a reason.
Reason.
So
It
that.
is, the
That's
gospel
your
I'm preaching
admonition
right now.
for the day.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which means if we have something in front of us and we call the vote, I guess that needs to be, if we vote it down, we don't have to say anything. But I think what you're saying is we should be able to verbalize, I guess, this is my reason for voting again. I don't know, honestly, because there's no place in this process right here. It just comes for a vote and I vote no. I don't have to say why. So how do we,
Well,
and I think I agree with you 100%. It gives us an opportunity to, you know, I guess we can speak before we vote.
well, if you have a motion and a second,
And you have discussion,
then
right?
that's when we should
Okay.
discuss before the vote.
Well, that answers one of my biggest questions as far as the having a reason to deny something that I don't think is proper. I've always had a little concern about that. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Thank you guys for,
Good
thank you
with
for
it.
calling the workshop. It's always good to do that refresher. For our office, the timing was perfect. Introduce you guys, Mariela Sanchez. She's our new administrative assistant. She's gonna be helping on the planning administration side a little bit. So you may hear a little bit less from Steve and hear a little more from Mariela. But this gives her a good introduction to what we're doing here. So timing was great.
I do think it's a good idea that when we talk about these zonings and when you're justifying something with the comprehensive plan, to make it more specific
To
what
the
part of the plan
land use plan.
that you're dealing with. I think that's a very good idea.
Okay, we will work on that.
Anything else?
One
Yes, sir.
thing,
Yes, sir.
since you are the one that's responsible for us being here an hour early, it's only appropriate that you buy drinks after P and Z.
Well, that's great, but you don't drink.
I know that. It doesn't affect me. I'm just saying. that
You can have a Coke.
Fine with me. I guess we adjourn this thing, 100.
All right,
Sounds
The
good. Thank you.
workshop is adjourned.
okay, I'm gonna make you